for altruism, selflessness, right? I mean, we borrowed that word and gave it a different meaning, but really selflessness means something different. Actually, selflessness means putting others before yourself, giving up your own. So by implication, yeah, it makes sense that possibly some of them understood there is no self. Yeah.
But they also use the identification of I am, which is identification of being, and then assuming that the being is light.
Mm-hmm. I didn't get that. Can you say that again? They use the identification
it's
I am?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty well-known thing that Jesus used the term I am as identification and then just identifying as being, so am.
Oh, instead of saying I am, just am.
Yeah, and then assuming being is pure light.
Okay.
So it's like, so you can make the identification eternal in this way.
Oh, right.
Because you just identify with light.
Okay, so just being, yes, but I is out. So no I. Yeah. Well, maybe. Yeah, you can interpret it that way. Yeah. All right. Anyway, thank you for the questions. Now to continue. What are we going to do tomorrow? Some questions? Pardon? Rejoice. Oh, for 3 hours. That's nice. We can do a little bit of rejoicing as part of this meditation as well. Right? We just rejoice. I remember one time, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I remember one time Lama Zopa Rinpoche came to a puja here, and whenever he gave a puja, of course, when it was a puja, he gave a lot of teachings, and the puja would take, yesterday, 2 hours? 11, 12. That's an early finish for a puja by Rinpoche. It can go the whole night. But anyway, it could go for a whole night. But anyway, Rinpoche talked about rejoicing, and he made everyone rejoice. He just said, now rejoice. And I was being a nun, most monks and nuns sit in the front, and we were rejoicing for like so long. And I was wondering, how do these people, I knew there were many newcomers, how is that for them? So I sneaked a peek. I kind of went and checked, and they were like, all like with their eyes closed. And Rinpoche gave them so much joy. It went on for so long, I forget. And I thought, oh my God, you can just force it. You can really just, it's incredible, rejoicing, right? If there's some kind of jealous thought, just rejoice, and it's gone. Right? It's true, isn't it? So he's like, he went through anything you can rejoice, and even like the ones you feel jealous about. Rejoice, rejoice. And there was this wave of rejoicing. I don't think anyone could have been jealous, right? You were just in it. So this wave just took over, right? It's like when they ask you to meditate on a person you love, and that fills your heart with this love. And the love, you allow it to grow, and it actually does. And then you can think of more people and kind of envelope them in that, or envelop, what do you call it? Envelop them in that love. Because you've got enough for everyone. It's incredible how the mind works. Instead of applying it, this antidote, that antidote, just let them rejoice. And then you learn that anytime you have this kind of thought, even if it's not jealousy, but you couldn't care less, about the success of another person, well, you spend some time rejoicing. And it's really like you fake it until you make it, and you make it quite quickly. Yes, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted, because a few people asked just to repeat tomorrow around 9.
Yes.
When the Kumpen will come.
Okay, yes.
Just give like a little bit of a wrap-up speak of how to check out and all of this thing. This might be for 15-20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards...
You'll be here first at 9, right?
Yes,
okay.
And then we will sit a bit... you can be here as well, but you don't have to waste the time on that, I guess.
Okay.
And then we will make most likely a group picture.
Okay.
Most likely before or after, I'm not sure, because we can't do it at the same time as the intro-course people.
No, of course.
And they will do it at just before lunch. So we would have to do it beforehand.
But we still have to fill 3 hours, so
And then, so this would take maybe...
Kumben, photo,
Yeah,
half an hour.
photo will maybe take altogether maybe half an hour. And then...
2.5 hours left. So, and a break, okay, so 2 hours and 15 minutes. What would you like to do tomorrow?
Q&A.
Pardon?
Question.
Would you like to ask questions? Anything, you're allowed to ask anything. Do you want? Still have questions? I'd be surprised if you didn't, but I just wanted to be sure, because sometimes I ask and no one raises their hand, so I'm not sure. But good, that's my favorite. My favorite is to answer questions, so no problem.
And meditation.
Some meditation, yes?
Farewell meditation.
A farewell meditation, we can do that, of course, yes. Okay, great. Should I talk more about Tantra? A little bit more? Okay, I'll say a little bit. Yes?
It's about Tantra, but could you talk about the preliminary practices?
The what?
The preliminary practices.
Oh, yes. But we haven't gotten there yet, because you need to do the preliminary practice as part of the highest Yoga Tantra. But we kind of got there. So we're starting now with highest Yoga Tantra. Okay, I was going to start that tomorrow, actually. In my mind, I was like, first action Tantra. But somehow it went quicker. But anyway, so you've got action Tantra. There are certain empowerments, there are approximation retreat, and so forth. So commitments and vows as well, at least the Bodhisattva vow. And some commitments. Oh, the commitments are also quite nice. Oh, one more part you also have, I should mention, is Guru Yoga. To always bring it back to the teacher. At the beginning of meditative practice, usually you have this Guru Yoga. Visualizing this meditative deity, you have the meditative deity that is external to yourself. So the external guru and your internal guru. That's also important. The external guru and the internal guru. So when we talk of Lama or Guru, actually we also accept an internal guru, even an internal Buddha, a resultant Buddha. You take refuge not just in the external Buddha, but also in the internal Buddha, right? You take refuge in that Buddha as well. Initially, it's less stressed. It's more the external. But as you go along, then as you proceed, like learning about Buddhism, then you also hear about an internal, you're taught about an internal Buddha. And with the Guru, that's also important that you have these internal divine qualities that we haven't accessed yet, and in the form of an internal Guru, and there's the external who points them out to you. And the external guru is inseparable from the meditative practice you do, from the meditative deity that is part of the practice you do. Does that make sense? So bring it all together. All these aspects are really important. I talked about Guru Yoga, the importance of it. Basically, your mind melting with the mind of the Buddha, mind of the Guru. You visualize the Lama, the Lama in the form of this particular Buddha figure actually absorbs into you and your mind becomes one. Again, a very effective sense of you're not alone. There's a sense I'm not alone, and my mind and the Buddha's mind are the same. So on the ultimate level, it makes sense, my mind and the Guru's mind, who's in actuality a Buddha. So my mind and the Guru's mind have become one. Ultimately, there is no difference. And conventionally, now they have merged, which of course they haven't, but again, it's effective to think so. And so Guru Yoga, actually, this whole idea of the Guru is mentioned, the importance of the Guru is actually obvious from the Tibetan Lamrim, the Lamrim practices, because relying on a spiritual teacher is mentioned first. However, for Westerners, it's sometimes taken out, because we don't have this, I don't know what you call it, like a person cult. Sometimes we find it very disturbing, putting this person on a pedestal and worshipping like an ordinary person, what appears to be an ordinary person. So sometimes we have a problem with that. But secondly, when you engage in tantric practices, you see the Buddha figure that you meditate on and the Guru as one, which means you see the Guru as Buddha. You don't have to do that when you don't practice Tantra. You don't have to do that. And it's not necessarily encouraged. Because we automatically see faults in other people. We see faults in the Guru. Of course, we project, if there aren't any, we project them. Of course we do. So initially, it's not a good idea. If you find it helpful, of course you can do it. But you may find, oh, I see this fault and that fault, and how can there be a Buddha? What kind of Buddha is that? What does it mean to be a Buddha? Be soul limited? I don't want to be a Buddha. You see where that can lead to. Which is why initially just a teacher having respect and so forth, like I'm talking about a Lama, gratitude, appreciation, etc., opening yourself to learning something new. But you don't need to see His Holiness as a Buddha, for instance. And once you start practicing Tantra, actually that becomes part of your practice. But then don't hang out with the Guru. Because you start seeing faults. It's just our mind projects them. So then they say, if you're a beginner of the practice, maybe some distance is good. Keep the mystical kind of, right? Because we project. Even, if you're around His Holiness, people see faults. You can't help it. You're like, oh, why does he talk like that? Why doesn't he do this? Why does he, right? Our mind finds faults. And that is a projection, of course, of our own limited view. Okay, so even everyone is a Buddha, we'll still see faults. Okay, therefore it takes some time to change our mind. Okay, but of course, if you still see faults, even as a tantric practitioner in other beings, then you realize they're just temporary. And you can look beyond this person and see the divine in others. And then love and compassion are much easier for others. You see the divine in others. And you can respect them. Respect is so important. Respecting others. Even if it's a really close friend. Even if it's your partner, your spouse. Because without respect, we can be really mean. I find respect is really important. Even to a really, really close friend. To always have that respect. Right? For their feeling, for their... And I sometimes, when I watch people, when they have like a fight, there's no respect. They love each other, but there's no respect. And when they're angry, they say the most horrible things. It's surprising they make up afterwards. Anyway, so I think respect is really important. Respect for anyone. Respect even for someone who, according to society, is lower than us. A coolie. Right? A coolie, a person, of course, and in India, of course, you have the caste system, but let's face it, in the West we have the class system. We have a class system. It's not the same as a caste system, but it's a class system. Lower class, depending on what school they went to, depending on what their job is. So just an ordinary person who cleans the toilet, to be full of respect for that person. Because so kind for them to keep the toilet clean. Clogged. No. Clean. Or the garbage person. Really, so kind of them. Respect, I think. So love, compassion. Compassion is not pity. Compassion is respectful. That's a part I haven't mentioned yet. I usually like to say, to have respect for everyone. And this tantric practice is very helpful when you see others as a manifestation of these deities. Then their faults, their shortcomings are only temporary. But you look past that and you see the divine in them and you have real respect. And a person who feels respected will always treat yourself and others in a very different way. I think that's such an important quality. Would you agree? It's such a beautiful quality. To never look down on anyone, always have respect for them. Even if they're, doing the most menial job. Yes. And anyway, I know some of the hotel keepers, they have, people working from them. I wouldn't call them servants, but and the ones that treat them with a lot of respect, you feel they're part of the family and they're there for a long time. And there are others who need to hire new ones all the time because no one likes to be treated like just a piece of dirt, right? Okay. Anyway, but for that also tantric practice is really beautiful. Generating respect for yourself as well. Self-respect, right? I'm not going to act like this. I'm this being. This is beyond me. Yes, Beate.
But how about, you talked about lower class and upper class and so on, but how about respect for somebody who's doing really mean things? Should you respect him as well?
Respect them, not for what they do. It's a bit like respect them as a human being and criticize their actions. It's again that same idea. We forgive the person, we love the person, we don't love their actions. We don't have to love their actions. But I do mean things at times. I do negative things. Do I want to be defined by those? Right? So when someone points out these things to me, there's a need to convey that I'm more than that. We have this natural sense. That's why we defend ourselves when someone attacks us, because we feel like they only see us as having this negativity. They don't see me for who I am. There's also a good side, please don't forget. That's how we feel. We know our mistakes. We make mistakes. We act in a way that is not appropriate, but there's more to us. And in the same way as we know we're not defined by our negativities, we don't want to be defined by them, we should always respect another person, even if they do mean things. Have respect for the person and for the potential, but act appropriately with regard to their, right? So I don't know how to put it into words. It sounds maybe wrong, but you know what I mean? Just for them being another human being. Yes, I think that's really important. You know, like the Tibetans, they have this tradition to respect monks and nuns. And sometimes monks and nuns behave really weirdly. I mean, they do weird stuff. They behave in a really inappropriate way. In fact, I know of a nun who has some mental issues. She's a Tibetan nun, and she has I don't know whether it's schizophrenia or whatever it is, something really, I mean, she becomes violent sometimes. And so the Tibetans are still respectful towards her. But when she acts in a certain way, in a respectful way, they tell her off. They say, no, don't do this. Now stop it and sit down. But there's still respect. And they say, we respect the vows. She still has vows. She has vows. So we distinguish between the person who has vows. We respect her for being a nun, but we don't respect that part. So to be able to distinguish between those two. And a mother does that too, right? Your daughter, you would always love her, right? No matter what she does. So it's that kind of love. And always respect her. There's also a respect for your daughter, for what she's done, right? Yeah. So I think if you think along these lines, it kind of explains it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, highest yoga tantra. Now, having talked about, well, these aspects, the vows, the commitments, likewise initiations, approximation retreat, this is true for all the different classes. Now, one more thing I want to say. In action tantra, there's more emphasis on the external. There's more emphasis on cleanliness, for instance. More emphasis on external cleanliness versus inner purification. Which it makes sense because the psychology of having a clean room and kind of structuring your thoughts. We all know that. If you're in a totally messy room, it's very difficult to have a clear thought. So first, the environment is supposed to be clear and clean. So there's a lot of emphasis on keeping your place clean, your own body clean. Again, also you feel much more comfortable if you're washed and you know, you smell not in a uncomfortable, in a disgusting way or whatever. So anyway, the point is a lot on external ritual, on external activities that have then an internal benefit. So of the external and the internal, what you eat. Very important to refrain from eating meat, refrain from the foods you're refraining from today. You refrain from eating today. same kinds of foods. So there's a lot of emphasis on that purity. And then for the next level, it's pretty equal. It's both external and internal to the same degree. There's not more emphasis on the external behavior, but also not more on the internal. Yeah, so purification, like, well, in terms of keeping clean, etc., preparing your altar, it's pretty equal. Then for Yoga Tantra, more emphasis on the internal development. What you eat, whether you keep clean or not, it's up to you, but it's not part of the practice. It's not that important any longer. And highest Yoga Tantra goes even beyond that, where the external, of course, is transformed by your own thoughts. I mean, at least you generate these thoughts, and therefore it's considered, this external is no longer considered important. It can be beneficial, of course, as part of an initiation, part of an empowerment. You have all these rituals that help you, but they actually don't help the Lama as much as the student. Because if there's something to look at, there's some water you give them to drink, or whatever else you do, this external helps you to internally keep focused. Okay. But highest Yoga Tantra is the most difficult part of Tantra. The initiations are really long. There are a lot of aspects of it. It makes sense if the practice is more complicated, that there are more aspects that you're initiated into. Yeah? And again, it's mere psychology. It's connecting to the Lama, it's making the connection to the Lama, to this practice, to ripen your mental continuum, etc. So no need to go into these initiations, because like even when I translate them into German, for instance, when I translate for His Holiness, and the other translators translating into their respective languages, we get the ritual text, and we're not allowed to pass it on. We're not allowed to give it to anyone. So we keep getting requests. I sometimes get requests, oh, please send me this text, I need it. And I keep telling them, ask Jadu Rinpoche, for instance, who I often work with to prepare such a text. I say, ask Rinpoche if he gives it to you, but also Rinpoche is very clear. In the beginning, I said, Rinpoche, could I just translate it and give everyone the translation? So at least with the outlines, not with all the details, but just the outlines. Because someone asked me for it. He said, no. You're not even allowed to have, you're supposed to just listen to the Lama and hear what he says. And since we're now all translating into our respective languages, those who don't listen to the Tibetan, who don't follow the Tibetan, may understand more. Because many of the Tibetans, of course, if you study Tantra in Tibetan and you're familiar with the vocabulary, then you can follow. But the Tibetan terminology, tantric terminology, you don't understand merely by knowing Tibetan. It's a very specific vocabulary, they're very specific terms. Whereas if you translate it into English, French, German, Spanish, and so forth, you all understand, because it's the ordinary language that we use. So a lot of foreigners, nowadays we really work hard, all the different translators, to translate the empowerment texts into different languages. And so you get actually more out of it. Those who are not Tibetans, you may actually get, if you're interested. I don't know how many are actually taking these initiations. No, I'm not talking to old students, but anyway, yeah, just to know. But it's still kept secret. So without saying anything more about these initiations, then the actual practices. Well, highest Yoga Tantric practice can be divided into Father Tantra and Mother Tantra. And Father Tantra reveals the practices, mainly the practices for generating an illusory body. Whereas Mother Tantra mainly reveals the practices for generating the clear light mind. Now you know what these two are for. I stressed that before. And then you have the generation stage practices. So, well, first of all, maybe if you follow a Father Tantra like Goya Samaja or Yamantaka, I've mentioned those two names before, or Mother Tantra are Hivajra and Heruka, but it doesn't mean they're male or female deities. For instance, Heruka is a male deity, but is part of the Mother Tantra. So it's related to, it reveals mainly the practices of bliss of the clear light mind. Anyway, so whichever practice you follow, ideally you follow the one of those practices, just one, and you make that your main practice. And then, as before, you engage in the generation stage practices. Again, like hypnotizing yourself, right? Basically going through it time and again. But, of course, based on the understanding that just as I lack inherent existence, myself being this particular deity also lacks inherent existence. And, of course, it's very much based on we are what we think, right? Our thoughts determine who we are. Let's not forget, there is no external me, objective me. It's all my own mind that creates who I am. Okay? Based on that, it makes if not more sense that I can be whoever I want. It's totally up to me, and I can be this Buddha figure. That is, I can become this Buddha figure. And of course, it goes along with learning what that really means. You have already this background, what a Buddha actually means. And so you prepare your mind in that way. So you go through practices of transforming ordinary states, such as ordinary death, the ordinary intermediate state, and ordinary rebirth, into generating the qualities of a Buddha. Okay? So I need to explain you too much about these qualities. So since we don't have enough time left, just trust me, there are certain qualities, or let's put it that way, there are two ways in which a Buddha manifests. In the form of a svabhava, in the form of I won't use this Sanskrit word, in the form of an enjoyment body and in the form of an emanation body. There are these two bodies in which a Buddha can manifest. And there's the mind of a Buddha. And so when you visualize your own death as part of the generation stage, it's all involved with visualization. So you visualize that your death, you turn your own death into the Dharmakaya of a Buddha, the body, the mind of a Buddha. And your intermediate state, you visualize, you go through the intermediate state after death, and you visualize that you generate the enjoyment body of a Buddha. And then you visualize your rebirth, that becomes, you become reborn, and that becomes like the emanation body of a Buddha. And this is all in preparation for when you actually die for the last time as a human being, and hopefully you can then no longer take rebirth, but instead you actually generate the mind of a Buddha. You generate the enjoyment body of a Buddha and the emanation body of a Buddha. It's all in preparation for that, based on the practices with the winds and channel and so forth. Yes?
I'm curious about the differences or similarities between the Sambhogakaya and the Rupakaya.
Rupakaya just means form body, means body. And then there is like what is called the enjoyment body, or Sambhogakaya, which is like after a Buddha, on the basis of Tantra, having generated during their practice an illusory body. That illusory body, when the being is enlightened, becomes the Sambhogakaya. It becomes the enjoyment body. So this is the actual way, based on their tantric practice, that is the actual body of a Buddha. Yeah? And then, because not everyone can perceive it, based on that, a Buddha emanates in many different ways, according to the needs and aspirations of sentient beings. Sentient beings, like a Sambhogakaya, or this enjoyment body, can only be perceived by beings of a certain level. In the sutric system, bodhisattvas who've realized emptiness directly, for instance. So in the tantric level, well, certain tantric realizations, I guess you must have realized. I don't think it's enough just to have realized emptiness directly. But anyway, the point is that this highest body of a Buddha that is newly accumulated after you became enlightened, it's not perceived by anyone except by beings of a certain level of realization. And since a Buddha needs another Rupakaya, that one being only accessible or being only visible to certain beings, he needs to also manifest in other ways. And those are then called emanation bodies. And it's not just one, there are many of them. The enjoyment body is usually one. That is the actual body of that being, but it can manifest in many different ways. Okay.
The name is
Pardon?
Is the emanation body? What's the name?
Nimanakaya.
Nimanakaya.
Yeah. That's the Sanskrit word. Yeah, Sambhogakaya, exactly. So those are both Rupakayas. They are both form bodies or physical bodies, if you like. And there are other, we call the body, even the mind of a Buddha is called truth body, but it's not a body in the sense of, the literal sense of the word body, but it's just a quality in this sense, or an aspect of the Buddha. In this case, we talk about the mind of the Buddha. Anyway, it becomes really, really complicated. It becomes more and more complicated. The thing is, and I'm not going to go into those complicated aspects, but it's not difficult, it's only complicated. Why? Because our psychological makeup is so complicated, right? It's just, we're complicated as people. So to undo all our restrictions and all our, shortcomings, and to be quick and effective, a lot of practices, we need to engage in a lot of practices. There are a lot of vows and commitments to be kept, but just for our own benefit. And it's said that if you practice highest yoga tantra and you keep all the commitments and all the vows, I think it doesn't take you longer than 7 lifetimes to become enlightened, and the quickest would be in that very life. Now, what does it mean to become enlightened in 1 lifetime? It doesn't mean to start from scratch. Doesn't mean you have never heard of Buddhism, you start practicing the Lam Rim for a few years, then you practice Tantra and you become enlightened in 1 lifetime. No, sorry. No, it's not that fast. That's misunderstood. No. It is, what it means to in 1 lifetime means you enter the Mahayana, you enter the Tantric path of accumulation in this lifetime, and you attain enlightenment in that very lifetime. If you can enter the Tantric path of accumulation in this lifetime, which is basically you generate bodhicitta, but having generated yourself, for instance, as a deity already. So you visualize yourself as a deity. So you're practicing this resultant aspect of Tantra, of course, doing all the preparations. It's not like you enter, it's not like you take an initiation and you enter the Mahayana, the Tantric path. No way. It's not like you hear about the Mahayana teachings, the Sutric Mahayana teachings, and you can generate bodhicitta. It's not as simple, is it? So similarly here, you get an initiation, you receive an initiation, and if you haven't generated bodhicitta yet, you have to generate it, of course. And if in this lifetime you generate bodhicitta, but with the motivation to practice the tantric path. So for instance, you generate yourself as the deity and then generate bodhicitta for the first time, uncontrived bodhicitta, that marks you entering the Mahayana path. Sorry, the tantric path. The tantric path of accumulation. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Yes. So, therefore, it's quite difficult. It takes time. Just a clarification? The question? Can you keep it until tomorrow? Yeah. Okay. So then, now I don't have time about, okay. I have no time to now talk about the winds and channels.
We don't have dinner.
We'll do it tomorrow. So we have a topic tomorrow. So this is actually quite exciting. So anyway, through the stage of generation, you prepare your mind now. Your mind is properly prepared. And when you can start, so this is the path of accumulation. You're on the path of accumulation when you're able, when you engage in the generation stage practice after you generated bodhicitta the way I explained. And then you start your completion stage. This is just generation. Completion stage, you try to now bring the subtle energy winds on which the different consciousnesses ride, that are all over your body, you try to bring them in what is called the central channel. And then you move on to the path of preparation. Okay, with that. So I'll talk about now completion stage tomorrow. That's when it gets interesting. Because you have all the, I think. I think it's really interesting how, about the chakras and about the different channels in our body. I'll say a little bit more about that, and it won't take that long. And that explains then fully how we become enlightened. Okay, great. All right, so let's do some pre-tantric meditation. Kind of, yeah, going in that direction. If you don't have a mala, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to sing the mantra like Om Mani Padme Hum Om. No. No, I feel like a shopkeeper if I. They don't sing it, but they always have it running in the back. No, I'll just say it Om Mani Padme Hum. And if you want to join in, you can. You can also do it silently, right? Okay. And I'll guide you through the meditation. And this is from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We take refuge. Okay, so the only prayer you need is taking refuge in generating bodhicitta. We can recite that together. And I'll say, take refuge and generate bodhicitta. So you have the prayer right here. Okay, so we start with this. And in order to make it most effective, we could take a short moment just to generate, to visualize Buddha's Buddha. Well, no, let's just take refuge and take refuge without visualizing, because the visualization is done afterwards. So the way we usually do, we do it 3 times without taking a break, yes, and generate bodhicitta, of course, as well. So try to do it as part of this prayer. Okay. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my accumulations of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my accumulations of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my accumulations of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. So now I'll go through the description. On your crown, upon a seat of lotus and moon, sits your root teacher, your root Lama, who is inseparable from Supreme Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of the world. Who is one face and 4 hands. The first 2 hands are folded in prayer. And the 2 remaining hands hold a crystal rosary and the stem of a white lotus in full bloom. His 2 feet are in the immutable cross-legged position. His body, like a moon, is replete with clear and complete marks and signs of a Buddha. And draped in silken garments and precious jewel ornaments. The crown of his head is marked by the syllable Om, his throat with the syllable A, and his chest area, his heart area, with the syllable Hung. think that from the Hung at his heart, light radiates and invokes all the supreme refuges, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who dissolve into him. Thereby, Avalokiteshvara, who's inseparable from your Lama, becomes the embodiment of all the objects of refuge combined. Now, with this visualization in your mind, think that you first respectfully bow to this Lama and this deity or Buddha figure. Seeing the Lama as inseparable from the Buddha figure, as an immaculate, fully spontaneous treasury of spiritual feats. Then visualize that you offer an ocean of clouds of all excellent offerings to Avalokiteshvara. Then think that you confess all your wrongdoings and promise to restrain yourself from negative actions from now on. Next is you rejoice in all the virtuous actions, not just of Avalokiteshvara, who is one with all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and one with your Lama. So not only do you rejoice in his virtues, but in the virtues and all the positive experienced by other sentient beings. So let's spend some minutes just rejoicing from the depth of our heart. Rejoice in all the enlightened activities but also in the practice of those still on the path. In their love, their compassion, and their wisdom. As well as the actions induced by these mental qualities. And rejoice in all the virtuous thoughts and virtuous actions of ordinary beings. And rejoice in the karmic experiences these beings have due to their virtuous actions, such as success, gain, being affluent, popular, and so forth. Really feel happy for all that is good in their lives. And of course, rejoice in all your virtuous actions. Those that you remember and those that you don't. And then once again, direct your attention to Avalokiteshvara, on the crown of your head, and entreat him to continue to teach the Dharma, to give the vast and profound teachings. And request Avalokiteshvara to be unwavering when it comes to him remaining alive, and ask him to remain in this world steadfast for hundreds of eons. And lastly, dedicate your entire collection of virtue to your great enlightenment. And having recited the 7-limb prayer, or having gone through the 7-limb meditation, visualize that at your heart there's the syllable Shri, which is the essence of Avalokiteshvara. And surrounding the syllable Shri is the mantra of Amani Padme Hum. So both the syllable Shri and the mantra circle surrounding the syllable are symbolic for Avalokiteshvara's compassion, and most importantly is compassionate speech. And think that white light radiates from the Shri at your heart and the mantra that surrounds the syllable and cleanses this impure world and all their inhabitants. Thereby leading all sentient beings to the sublime level of the lotus holder, who is Avalokiteshvara. So in other words, while you recite the mantra, remain aware of the Shri at your heart and the mantra that surrounds it, and visualize that white light radiates out from your heart and removes all the suffering, all the shortcomings of sentient beings and leads them to the enlightened state of a Buddha in the form of the Buddha of compassion. So now we recite the mantra. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Padme Hum, Om Mani 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 Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. So think that it was because of your recitation of the mantra, inspired by Avalokiteshvara at the crown of your head or above the crown of your head, that you purified sentient beings and led them to the enlightened state of a Buddha. And feel a deep sense of joy for having benefited sentient beings in that way. And then think, my teacher, my Lama, or Venerable Lord Avalokiteshvara, as I have none other than you to rely on, from now on until I reach enlightenment, kindly guide me with your great compassionate heart. And by the force of this heartfelt prayer, think that your teacher, who's manifested in the form of Avalokiteshvara, but inseparable from all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, melts into light and dissolves into you through the crown of your head. Thereby blessing your body, speech, and mind. With 100-fold blessings of his holy body, speech, and mind. Feel as if, or think that now your mind has become one with the compassionate mind of Avalokiteshvara. And that you have attained all these qualities of unconditional love, affection, and compassion. Affecting your actions of body, speech, and mind. And then let's dedicate all the virtue we've accumulated throughout today, starting from this morning all the way to now having done this meditation on Avalokiteshvara. So I'll read you the prayer that is in here and please reflect on it. Through this virtue, may I quickly accomplish all-powerful Avalokiteshvara. And may I lead all sentient beings, leaving not even one of them behind, to the same level of Avalokiteshvara. And then let's recite the dedication prayers that we prepared. Let's recite them together. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta, not yet born, arise. May that arisen have no decline, but increase more and more. May the precious view of emptiness, not yet born, arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Thank you. Did you see me jump? That was the spider. Okay, anyway. How was that? How was that meditation? Was that interesting? Did you enjoy that? Okay, good. Okay. All right. So I was going to say enjoy your the hot chocolate. Yes, so enjoy your drink and have a good night, a clear night with lucid dreams of Avalokiteshvara and our great spiritual masters. And then see you again tomorrow. Okay.